it's Reija and welcome to another day of VLOGMAS. Today it's the Independence Day of Finland, and as our country is taking its first teetering steps towards another century of independence, I'm going to be looking into the future as well. And I'll be sharing with you some Finnish fantasy books that I want to read in 2019. Let's get started. So the thing is, I have been really bad about reading books in Finnish written by authors who write in Finnish, or reading books written by Swedish authors. I have been really bad at keeping up to date with the Finnish fantasy publishing because I've been more focused on reading books in English and reading translated fiction. So I thought that next year I would do my best to read some actual Finnish fantasy. First book I plan on reading is Naundel by Maria Turchaninov. Maria Turchaninov is a Swedish-speaking Finn, which means that she is Finnish, but her native language or her first language is Swedish, and she writes in Swedish. And I'm currently debating with myself whether I want to read Naundel in the original Swedish version text, or whether I want to read it as the Finnish translation, as I did with Maresi. So the jury is still out on that, but Naundel is pretty much a prequel to Maresi. It is a story about how the abbey gets founded and how the Holy Sisters first come to the island. And it is basically about these women who are strangers to each other but happen to find themselves in this one man's harem, and how they escape their plight and found the Red Abbey. And I am quite eager to get to it. I did not fully enjoy Maresi. I thought it was good. It had some really interesting world building, and I loved the magic in it and the whole female power thing. But it was a bit choppy in places, and the characters weren't all there. So I'm going into Naundel with kind of lowered expectation, but I am intrigued. Next book I want to read is Hän sanoi nimekseen Alea by Erika Wijk, or She Said Her Name Was Alea. And this is a fantasy story which has a kind of climate change thematic. It is about this race of people, or I'm not sure if they are humans, but they are called Silesians, and they have control over wind. And one day this Silesian man discovers that the winds are acting strange. And then there's this human girl who only knows her name, and that is Alea, that happens to come across his dwelling, and she can also tell that something is wrong in the winds. And he is very mystified by this because humans shouldn't be able to do that. And this is the first part of a trilogy, and I love the covers. I've been meaning to read these books for a long time, and I'm hoping to like the first one because I really want to read this. Third book I want to read is Käärmeiden kaupunki by Katri Alatalo, or City of Snakes. And I am a little bit apprehensive about this. This is an epic fantasy. It's supposed to be a standalone, and it is inspired by the tales of 1001 Nights and also Middle Eastern culture, and it is basically like a desert fantasy sort of. There is this city that's located in a desert, and the idea is that it's an epic fantasy, but it takes place in a very localized area. And there is this trio of friends who are a very close-knit group of friends, and something happens that makes them fall apart, and then the city they live in gets invaded by the enemy, and then they have to work together to survive and free their city from slavery. And I'm a little bit apprehensive because I think that authors can write whatever they want, and you should be able to write whatever you want, and it is, in my opinion, okay to get inspiration from other cultures as long as you do the research and really are respectful. But since this is Katri Alatalo is a Finnish person and she is very far removed from Middle Eastern culture and such, I'm a little bit apprehensive at what the result is. But this book has been pushed so much by the publishers. It's had an amazing marketing campaign here. You could hardly miss it when it first came out. So that's why I'm really interested what it actually entails and what the contents are. But I'm a little bit apprehensive. And then I want to read Soja by Laura Luotola. And this one is actually one that I already have on my Kindle. And I am really excited for it. This is coined as a science fiction fantasy, and it has LGBTQ+ themes. It is supposed to have a sapphic romance, as far as I can tell. And I am just very intrigued. It is basically about this kingdom that has two sides, and they are protected by this sphere, this barrier called Soja. And something is happening, in the world that is making the powers that be start to look into the stars and see if they can actually live for other planets. That's pretty much what I have gathered from the synopsis. I'm going in pretty blind, but I'm just really intrigued because science fiction fantasy isn't something that I've read almost at all, and to have a Finnish science fiction fantasy book is pretty exciting. So I am highly anticipating to read this one. And the last book I have on this little list is Mifongin Perintö by J.S. Meresmaa, or The Inheritance of Mifongi, if you want a very rough translation. And this is basically about a family who runs this fine arts antique shop, and they hear stories about this really precious book that belonged to a king that has suddenly surfaced somewhere, and they send one of the sons of the family to look for it. And in the course of his travels, this man happens to come across an adventure and some sort of courtly intrigue, and pretty much gets involved in something that's too big for him. And this is also another starter of an epic fantasy trilogy, and I attended a panel where this author was speaking at this year's FinCon, and I got really intrigued about this series, so I wanted to try it out. And there you have it. These are some of the Finnish fantasy books that I want to read in 2019. Please hold me accountable. And which of these books sounds most exciting to you? Which of these do you think I should prioritize and read first? Tell me in the comments, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!